sports. It's in the game.
Do not adjust your screen. You really are seeing 2021 pre-season remasters. Today we bring you a one-off special re-recording of the pre-season testing here at Barcelona as the teams gear up for the 2021 Formula 1 season. Now this will replace the original video that was uploaded in 2021 when the story was started out as the commentator season. The original had minor inconsistencies, particularly regarding the 2020 F2 Championship standings after we brought that to you in 2023, after which the story was renamed F1 Driver Career Aiden Jackson, rendering the original outdated. So this new version will clear out those and will now feature the story standings. And this will also be a modernized version as you've seen with the show intro, and the team driver lineup and calendar details will also be delivered to you in a much better format. And of course, what you're seeing right now. Now, this does come with a caveat. Unfortunately, we won't be able to remaster the entire season as we no longer have the original files, and re-recording those could upset the balance when it comes to the story we've created thus far already, so just keep that in mind. Due to the delay of the raft of technical regulations that was announced last year in the midst of the most unusual season ever, we'll have to wait until 2022 to enter the newest era of Formula 1. But one rule that has come into effect this year is the introduction of a budget or cost cap. Now, how this works is that all teams are limited to $145 million spent in car performance for the current calendar year, while marketing costs, driver fees, and the three highest paid members of a team will be exempt from it. In basic terms, this only focuses on car upgrades specifically. But bear in mind the teams are also restricted to the amount of CAFD ATR testing hours as well, based on their Constructors' Championship positions in the previous season. Again, in basic terms, the lower they finish in the Constructors' Championship, the more CFD ATR testing hours you'll receive in the following season, over the course of the year that is. If any of the teams exceed this limit, there are three categories of penalties that can be imposed: procedural, minor overspend, and material overspend. Procedural breaches will mostly be met with team fines, while minor overspends may be a combination of sanctions along with the fine depending on a 5% spread threshold. The most common of these would be reduction in ATR CFD testing time for the following season, while others include race bans and point deductions. Material breaches will be met with possible exclusion from the Constructors' Championship, and if the breach is really egregious, the drivers may also be thrown out of the standings. If you're confused, don't worry, you're not alone. What will hopefully be less confusing is our rundown of the runners and riders for the 2021 season and the tracks they'll be racing on, as Aaron Henwood provides all the details. Around the world, 2021 is seen as the year that life should somewhat return to a form of normal after the most unusual 12 months in human history. But even in this new normal, this world of sport is taking no chances when it comes to public safety. So unfortunately, fan appearances are still discouraged until further notice, and at least the lightest levels of protocols are still in place. The calendar has also been heavily altered once again, and we'll cover that in a moment. So we start the team driver rundown with the reigning champions Mercedes, and as you'd expect, there are no changes there, with Lewis Hamilton on the verge of becoming the undisputed greatest of all time in Formula 1, as should he win the title this year, that'll put him on 8 championships. Of course, putting him ahead of the great Michael Schumacher. Considering Mercedes' dominance over the last 8 years, it seems more a formality, a question of when rather than if. So the real question this year is on the other side of the garage as Valtteri Bottas enters the final year of his current contract, and George Russell's spectacular stand-up performance for Hamilton and Sakir last season put him front and centre to replace Valtteri in the event of a non-renewal. So Valtteri will do the job, as it were, and even that may not be enough. But now, he'll be looking over his shoulders at a new man, Aiden Jackson. More on him later. Red Bull, well, more Max Verstappen if we're being completely honest, go into the season as the main contenders to the right of Mercedes as the second driver merry-go-round continues, as Alexander Albon has been dropped probably just as unfairly as many drivers before him, and this benefits Sergio Perez as his win in Sakir literally saved his career. And unlike his move to McLaren in 2013, he's much more rounded and a race winner to boot. So Red Bull for now appears to be abandoning the young driver philosophy to retain some stability and fight from two fronts in a bid to topple the Mercs. Speaking on driver merry-go-rounds, Daniel Ricciardo is moving seats again as he's landed at McLaren alongside Lando Norris. McLaren would probably be my pick for dark horses this season, an experienced winner in one car and an up-and-coming talent in the other, and of course returning to the Mercedes power unit for the first time since 2014. And thus all the pieces are in place ready for the regulation shake-up next year, in a car that will favour McLaren the most, we feel, as we know that the chassis is their strongest asset. So as you can imagine, 2021 will be purely a gap year for the Papaya outfit to build on their highest constructors finish again since 2014. One other stat to keep track of is that the team's last race win was the Brazilian Grand Prix of 2012 with Jenson Button. Given the driver lineup this year, in the right situation, we may see one of F1's biggest giants finally back on the top step of the podium this year. The first of the rebranded teams this year is Aston Martin, who returned to the sport full-time after their last appearance all the way back in 1960 as they take over from Racing Point. This was made possible after Lawrence Stroll increased his stake in the company to 16.7%. So it should come as no surprise to see Lance retained from Racing Point's assets, and he partners another man playing musical chairs in Sebastian Vettel after he left the sinking ship of Ferrari. So a strong driver lineup for sure, but rumour has it that this has created a rift in the team, as current team principal Omar Savna has heavily advocated for rising star Aiden Jackson since the young Brit's phenomenal their free title win in 2019. To be fair to Aston though, as we'll explain in a moment, Mercedes have their own plans for their young driver. Welcome back Fernando Alonso. After a 2-year absence following his messy breakup with McLaren in 2018, he's back, and back with Renault for a third time. Kind of. Renault have also rebranded into Alpine for 2021. Now Alpine is currently owned by Renault and is predominantly in sports cars, and as a result of this, they will still be running the Renault power unit, and thus be the only works team, alongside Ferrari of course. Partnering Alonso this year will be Esteban Ocon, acquired from Racing Point, the first driver-team combination since 1994, when Ligier had not only one, but two French drivers, Olivier Panis and Eric Barnard. Disaster, that's the only word to describe Ferrari's 2020 campaign. Before the season even started, they had a discontented driver after unceremoniously dropping Sebastian Vettel, and things never really improved from there. Eventually finishing 6th in the constructors' standings, it was their worst finish since 1980 when they were 10th. So after Seb getting the boot, unfairly some would say, Charles Leclerc is now the new young hope, but it's his teammate that raised eyebrows in surprise. Rather than take a huge risk on F2 champion Mick Schumacher, which makes sense in all honesty considering the immense pressure he'd be under in such a young career alone, without the Schumacher ties to it, or a safe shoreline option in say Nico Hulkenberg, who would have been my pick personally. Instead they went with Carlos Sainz. What an irony, the man snubbed by the main Red Bull team for years ends up in another one of the big three anyway. What an opportunity for Carlos to prove a point to Red Bull, should Ferrari manage to steer this ship in a better direction this year. Plus, good luck on trying to beat Max Verstappen. Back in the Red Bull family, the driver merry-go-round brings Yuki Tsunoda to AlphaTauri, rather than giving a second shot to Alex Albon. Maybe a bit harsh considering what a second chance did for Pierre Gasly, another one of the sport's newest race winners. But Yuki is no slouch. He's improved in F2 last season with a 5th place standings finish, less than 100 points behind the champion Mick Schumacher. Yuki is one of just 3 rookies this year, and considering where the other 2 ended up, he should win the Rookie of the Year rather comfortably, if there was an award for that of course. Gasly though might be a bit out of his reach, but with Gasly the real question now is how long will he be at AlphaTauri or even the Red Bull family for that matter. In my opinion, he might be better off keeping his options open, considering a way back to the main Red Bull team is looking slim at best at this point. Moving on to Alfa Romeo, they probably had the most uneventful season of all the teams, with an unchanged lineup of Raikkonen and Giovinazzi, despite heavy speculation surrounding Mick Schumacher and Carlo Mailot, who lost their practice runs at the Nürburgring due to heavy rain in the most 2020 thing ever. Raikkonen is simply in it for the love of the game at this point, while Giovinazzi can thank Ferrari for that second seat, as it is somewhat owned by them. If it isn't broke, don't fix it. This doesn't look like Alfa Romeo could be particularly going forward either. Williams will most likely be preparing for life after George Russell, with Nicholas Latifi penned in for the foreseeable future. They have plenty of options from their academy, with Jack Aitken front and centre after debuting for Russell in Sakir last year, plus Roy Nissany, Logan Sargent and even Jamie Chadwick competing in lower formulas. They could also look to free agents such as Alex Albon or Nick de Vries, and maybe even an outside shot at Aiden Jackson. It's also a new era at Williams as a whole after the team was bought by Dalton Capital last year, and we're grateful to them for keeping the Williams name, even though no Williams family member is part of the team in any capacity for the first time in 43 years. If Russell is Mercedes bound, it certainly is the best time for the team to reset, especially with the incoming regulation shakeup. And finally we come to HAAS, and if I was to say it was an undramatic off-season for them, I'd be lying, because let's be honest, when is it ever not dramatic at HAAS? And where to begin? Questionable and crippling sponsorship deals, warring drivers with the team and each other, slam and smash doors? It was all capped off in flames, literally, after Romain Grosjean's frightening crash in Bahrain, in which ever so thankfully he was able to walk away from with minor injuries, in which was nothing short of a miracle, honestly. With Romain out and Kevin Magnussen dropped for the sake of Gunther Steiner's doors, the team, like many others, are intending to use 2021 as a gap year and focus all resources into 2022. Not that they have much choice in the matter after being somewhat cash-strapped after their sponsorship fast in 2019. A shame really, as the livery they had back then was one of my personal favourites. Anyway, they started the search for replacements early on in 2020. Ferrari guaranteed them a driver if any of their academy drivers won the F2 championship. So that was either Mick Schumacher, Callum Mailot or Robert Schwarzman. Schumacher proved to be unbeatable, especially in feature races, scoring 5 wins out of 6 of them, winning the title and locking him into that first seat, and HAAS reaping in the publicity that's going to undoubtedly come with it, along with a good chunk of sponsorship money from 1&1. The team also, apparently, had their eyes on the 2 drivers at Hitech GP, Aiden Jackson and Nikita Mazepin, and also agreed to take whoever finished ahead in the standings. And with all due respect to Mazepin, he wasn't even close. Jackson was coming into 2020 as the reigning F3 champion after he narrowly edged out Devon Butler in the final round in Abu Dhabi. He had also been signed to the Mercedes Driver Academy at this time, and not only that, but then Racing Point team principal Otmar Savner publicly stated that the moment Jackson was ready for Formula 1, Racing Point must sign him. Jackson also entered 2020 as Mercedes' highest priority talent, and almost immediately made an impact. At Silverstone he fell to the back after losing the car just meters from the start, and what followed was a mesmerizing drive through the field mixed with a 300 IQ strategy call onto the dry tyres to take a truly unbelievable win in a drive that mirrored his hero Michael Schumacher's win at the Belgian Grand Prix of 1995. Amidst their budding friendship, he took the title fight with Mick to the final event, but in the feature race, Mick was on another level. But even still, Jackson had everyone talking with a second place standings finish. But then, because HAAS, Mazepin was announced as the second driver instead, leaving Jackson's fans outraged and his peers and Santner in disbelief. Aiden took it all in stride, and to be fair, he probably wasn't complaining much anyway. As an immediate response, Mercedes assigned him to the young development role, meaning he would be guaranteed 2 FP1 sessions over the course of 2021 under the rules for young drivers. When HAAS revealed their car livery in mid-January, everything became abundantly clear. Yukali, a Russian potash fertilizer company, was a prominent sponsor on the car, and whereas the team stated that the colours, red, white and blue, were the colours of the American flag, no one was buying it. And who owns Yukali? Dmitry Mazepin, Nikita's father. The Keep Fighting Foundation logo was noticeably missing on Schumacher's car, but honestly, that's more to do with the fact that the Keep Fighting is a non-profit organisation, a charity in other words. But wait, there's more. Recently, Mazepin posted a rather controversial, for lack of a better word, video on his Instagram account, and the backlash was immediate, with petitions and an online movement calling for the Russian to be dropped and Jackson to be put in the seat he duly deserved. Jackson was wisely steering clear of the matter under the protection of Toto Wolff. HAAS themselves tried to resolve the matter, claiming it was being dealt with, but were perhaps understandably somewhat reluctant to drop him considering the financial strife they were facing. They simply couldn't lose another sponsor, and who can blame them? In the end though, the choice was taken out of their hands when the FIA stepped in. Mazepin's actions were against the pre-races one stance, and they ordered him out of the race seat immediately and for the whole of 2021. And whereas it took some persuasion, Dmitry eventually agreed with 2 catches. Nikita must be in the seat for the 2022 season, provided he doesn't get into any more incidents to jeopardise the opportunity, and to receive no funding whatsoever for the 2021 season, which basically means that the car they launch with was going to be the car for the entire year, which basically confined Schumacher and whoever his teammate was to be at the back of the field with no possibility to upgrade the car at any point. For Mercedes, this was perfect. A perfect opportunity to load Aiden Jackson into a team with almost no expectation of even points finishes, taking the pressure completely off both him and Schumacher. Basically, 2021 is a year to learn on the track and prepare for the 2022 cars. Mercedes made the call and sold their pitch, and in the irony of all ironies, Mick Schumacher and Aiden Jackson end up being HAAS teammates after all. As a side note, because Aiden is in hindsight still on Mercedes' books, the FIA have allowed him, Aiden that is, to take part in the 2 practice sessions over the course of the season in one of their cars, and Mazepin will take the reins at HAAS in those sessions. The calendar has been heavily altered once again. Sadly, we still miss out on the Australian, Chinese, Canadian, Japanese and Singapore Grand Prix, followed recently by Turkey and the debut of Qatar. But the inclusion of Portimao, Imola, a second race at Austria, the new track in Saudi Arabia and the returning French and Azerbaijan Grand Prix, it does bring the season up to 20 races, which is more than enough to count for the championship.